Out front next, the breaking news. The polls closing right now in Virginia, where Trump is looking for payback tonight. This as the former president makes a major and unfounded accusation against Biden just moments ago. Plus, North Korea pulling out all the stops. Kim Jong-un now welcoming Putin to the Hermit Nation as Russian state TV zeroes in on this program's coverage. And we're going to tell you why live from Moscow tonight. And from in sync to in jail, we have new details on why Justin Timberlake spent the night in jail. Let's go out front. And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, we begin with the breaking news. There are polls closing right now within the past minute in a crucial 2024 primary that could be a big tell for the presidential election. And we are standing by right now for results in the race for the Republican nomination in Virginia in the 5th Congressional District. This is the most expensive House Republican primary of the year. And it is a race that Donald Trump takes very personally.
If he's reelected, Bob Good will stab Virginia in the back, sort of like he did with me.
Trump slamming the incumbent congressman there, who is Bob Good. Why, you may ask? Well, Congressman Good initially endorsed the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, in the Republican presidential primary. Now, after DeSantis dropped out, Good immediately backed Trump. Even went so far as to be in the group of acolytes or disciples, the people who came to the criminal trial of Trump in New York and rode in Trump's motorcade to the courthouse. He did all of this, like I said, a disciple, the ultimate show of loyalty for Trump. But that is not enough. Trump is now supporting Good's challenger, a man named John McGuire. And Trump thinks that Virginia is in play for his election in November.
We're going to put a very heavy play on Virginia, and I think we're going to win the state of Virginia. We're up now in the polls.
Now, Virginia is crucial. Now, Trump is not beating Biden yet. A recent poll, though, shows Biden and Trump now tied in Virginia. Keep in mind, Biden won that state by 10 points in 2020. And right now, Biden is in Virginia at a fundraiser with Bill and Hillary Clinton, where they say they are raising $8 million, the most ever for a Democrat in Virginia in a presidential election. But that neck-and-neck poll comes as tonight we have a new national poll showing the same thing, showing Biden and Trump tied just days before the first presidential debate nationally. And that is the debate that Trump is talking about at this hour. So it was just a few moments ago at this rally in Wisconsin, he made an outrageous claim that Biden will use cocaine at the debate.
Joe Biden doesn't have a clue. Now we're going to watch. Is anybody going to watch the debate? He's going to be so pumped up. He's going to be pumped up. You know all that stuff that was missing about a month ago from the White House? What happened? Somebody didn't pick up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cocaine. I wonder who that could have been. I don't know. Actually, I think it was Joe.
Maybe slightly unclear what Trump is talking about specifically, but generally we all get the point. Melanie Zanona is out front live outside Congressman Good's campaign headquarters in Virginia, which is a crucial state, Melanie, as I said, neck and neck now in polls for Trump and Biden. Biden there tonight at a fundraiser. What is the latest you're learning as these polls have just closed in Virginia?
Yeah, the polls did just close moments ago in what has become the most bitter and expensive House Republican primary race in the country. And the reason for that is because Bob Good is a very polarizing figure inside the GOP. And there are a lot of Republicans who are looking for payback. Chief among them is Donald Trump. As you mentioned, he has never forgiven Bob Good for initially endorsing Ron DeSantis over Trump back when Trump was battling some legal troubles and it did not look like he might become the eventual nominee. Of course, as you mentioned, Good did eventually flip his support to Donald Trump when Ron DeSantis jumped out of the race. But that was not enough for Donald Trump, who is endorsing John McGuire, his opponent. He did a teletown hall last night for the candidate, and he even sent a cease and desist letter to Bob Good's campaign, urging him to not use campaign signs that suggest that Trump is supporting Bob Good. And then, of course, in the other camp, there's Kevin McCarthy and his allies who are coming after Bob Good because he was one of those 8 Republicans who voted to remove Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. Now, Bob Good does have his share of allies. He has Matt Gaetz. He has the House Freedom Caucus. He has some conservative outside groups. But he was outraised by his opponents. And notably, Speaker Mike Johnson has stayed on the sidelines of this fight, probably because he doesn't want to get on Trump's bad side. And so no doubt this test is going to be of Trump's strength and influence inside the GOP tonight. Aaron.
All right, as we await the formal results there, Melanie Zanona, thank you very much. As you said, as she is outside Congressman Good's headquarters, as we await making the call, Harry Enton, that could be crucial as we go beyond the numbers, because this is about the power of Trump, as Melanie says, right? He has put a lot in this. He has been nasty about Bob Good. No question where he stands.
A surprise.
What is his record when it comes to endorsements?
Basically, he's won every single time that he's endorsed a candidate this cycle. They've won. There's exactly one candidate that he's endorsed that has not won. Look at that record.
88 to 1.
88 to 1. Now, of course, this is a very specific race in which he's going against an incumbent, and this, in my mind, gives you a really good indication how far that Trump brand actually goes. Can he actually defeat an incumbent? Most of the people he backs are, in fact, incumbents themselves or people in open races. And I will note that Trump's record this year is the best so far in this cycle of any cycle in terms of endorsements since he became president.
Okay, and that's crucial. That is, though, some might say, all right, but those are primaries. That's the far right of the party, and that's not the same as the general.
Yeah.
So let's go there. Let's go overall. If you look at Republicans overall, how is he doing? Is he winning over more and more Republicans overall?
Absolutely, Aaron. You know, the fact is there are a lot of people who say, oh, Nikki Haley challenged him. Where are those Nikki Haley voters going to go?
She's still pulling 20% in those primaries.
Exactly right. But if you look at the polling right now, what do we see? We see Trump's margin against Joe Biden or against a Democratic candidate climbing higher and higher and higher. You go back to 2016, you saw that Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, Trump was leading at this point by 79 points. You go to 2020, Trump was leading over Joe Biden by 83 points with Republicans. You go now, he's leading by 87 points among Republican voters. So you might say the Republicans, they'll be backing him anyway, but they're backing him in stronger and stronger numbers. And that's one of the reasons why I'm keeping an eye out on the primary tonight, because I'm interested. Are there any cracks at all to be seen among Republican primary voters?
All right, so that's crucial for the state of Virginia. Now, obviously, this is in the context of the debate that is coming up in just a few days. And we've got the national polls, as I mentioned, Virginia neck and neck, but nationally neck and neck as well. So what are the three states that you think right now are the most important that you're looking at?
It's the Great Lake battleground states. It's that blue wall, right? It's Pennsylvania. It's Michigan. It's Wisconsin. If Joe Biden can win these three states, he very likely will be the next president of the United States. Yes, there are maps you can draw where he wouldn't be, but if he wins in these three states, he can win despite all that poor polling. And if you look at the polling right now in those three states, look at it. It's neck and neck. It's neck and neck in Michigan. It's neck and neck in Wisconsin. Maybe a slight lead for Trump in Pennsylvania. Trump, if he can win one of these states, he's probably going to be the next president. But if Biden wins all three, he will probably be the next president.
All right, Harry, thank you very much. And I want to go now to Sherwin Hughes, radio host of The Truth with Sherwin Hughes, radio show based out of Wisconsin, and Republican Bruce Blakeman, who is the Nassau County executive here in New York State. So, Sherwin, you know, you hear Harry, and you talk about that Trump is doing well with his endorsements, but also doing better even among Republicans than he has in the past, and in just a few of those states, as Harry's laying out, tied neck and neck. Are you concerned at this point that he is coming in stronger than he did in 2020 and even in 2016?
I am not, because we've seen the kind of liability that Donald Trump has been on other Republicans that he has supported in previous cycles. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. So Donald Trump getting some candidates across the finish line in primaries, I don't think that's any kind of harbinger of the future or of what may happen come 20 weeks from today.
Bruce, I would imagine you see, even when you look at the blue, those crucial Midwest states that are must win, you see a very different picture.
Well, let me give you a little example. In Anthony D'Esposito's district, the 4th Congressional District, Joe Biden won that district by 16 points last election. Donald Trump is now up 5 points. That's a 21-point swing in suburban Nassau County, right outside of New York City. Donald Trump is now trailing Joe Biden by 6 points in New York State. We're seeing a trend where Donald Trump is getting stronger and stronger because the issues favor Donald Trump, whether it's sanctuary cities, whether it's the invasion from south of the border, whether it's crime, inflation, all the policies that people are rejecting of Joe Biden. They realized that when President Trump was president, that they had a much better quality of life.
Well, I mean, obviously it was COVID at that time, but to not relitigate all of that, Sherwin, I want to ask you about sometimes politics being local, separate from the big issues which matter nationally. And Bruce is right? People care about immigration. They care about the economy, of course. In Wisconsin, though, your must-win state, Trump is there today. He was in Racine. Now he's in Wisconsin on stage. And he came out in Milwaukee and tried to clean up his recent comments. So he had recently said behind closed doors, and he was quoted as saying, Milwaukee is horrible. Milwaukee is, of course, the site of the GOP convention in just about a month, a Democratic city, and obviously in a must-win state. So he came out trying to clean it up. Here he is, Sherwin.
Tonight on 360, primary night in 3 states. One race getting national attention. We'll take you there. Donald Trump campaigning outside Milwaukee, denying he called it horrible. What local voters make of it, and new reporting he was planning to stay elsewhere during the Republican convention. Also tonight, our first look at Vladimir Putin's visit to North Korea and the help he's seeking from fellow despot Kim Jong-un. And later, a megachurch pastor and one-time Trump spiritual advisor admits to inappropriate sexual behavior after allegations it was with a 12-year-old girl. Good evening. We begin with breaking news. Primary night in Oklahoma, Georgia, and Virginia, where a kind of high-power proxy battle is about to be decided. Congressman Bob Good, chairman of the House Freedom Caucus and a staunch conservative, facing a challenger backed by the former president. You might ask, why didn't Trump back Good? Because the congressman dared endorse Ron DeSantis for president. A loss by the incumbent could be yet another demonstration of Donald Trump's clout. CNN's Melanie Zanona joins us now from Congressman Good's primary night headquarters. What's the scene there like? What are their expectations?
Well, Anderson, Congressman Good just walked in moments ago, and there was a small but very excited group of supporters waiting to greet him inside this very small, quaint Italian restaurant here in Lynchburg, Virginia. But even though Good's team is feeling confident based on some of the early returns and numbers they're seeing, there's a lot of uncertainty inside that room. I overheard people asking each other, what do you think is going to happen tonight? And that is because this has become one of the most bitter and the most expensive House Republican primary race in the country. Bob Good was outraised by his opponent, John McGuire, who's a Navy SEAL, a state lawmaker. McGuire has racked up endorsements from 15 of Good's own House Republican colleagues, including a member of the Freedom Caucus, where Bob Good is a chair. So just a sign of how divisive and a polarizing figure Bob Good is inside the GOP, even though he does have his share of allies and defenders.
Can you walk us through just some of the background on how Congressman Good ran afoul of not just former President Trump, but also former Speaker Kevin McCarthy and others?
Right. He's definitely created his share of enemies inside the GOP, and those Republicans are looking for payback tonight. Of course, there's Donald Trump, as you mentioned. He has never forgiven Bob Good for endorsing Ron DeSantis early on, even though we should mention Bob Good did flip his support to Donald Trump after DeSantis dropped out of the race. That was not good enough for Donald Trump, and he has endorsed John McGuire. He did a telethon hall last night for John McGuire, and his campaign even sent a cease and desist letter to Bob Good saying he can't use these signs that seem to suggest that Trump is still supporting Bob Good. I should note, we spotted one of the signs inside the Italian restaurant tonight. And then, of course, there's Kevin McCarthy and his allies who are coming after Good with everything they've got. They poured a ton of money into this race. And the reason is because Bob Good was one of those 8 Republicans who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. So this race tonight, Anderson, is not only going to test Trump's influence inside the GOP, but also be a test of the strength of Kevin McCarthy's revenge tour.
All right, Melanie Zanona, thanks. I want to turn to CNN political director Dave Chalian at the matchup call. So what are the numbers right now?
Well, right now, here is Virginia. We're going to go into the 5th congressional district here, Anderson. And what you see right now is a razor-thin race. 42 votes separates John McGuire, the challenger here. He's got 50.3% of the vote, to Bob Good's 49.7% of the vote. You see the raw numbers here. He is just 42 votes ahead right now. We've only got about 9% of the estimated vote in right now, so there is a lot of vote counting to do here, Anderson. The fact that we're even talking about this primary is kind of astonishing. It kind of encapsulates, as Melanie just explained, all the intra-party dynamics going on with the House Republican Conference, Trump loyalty test, the ousting of Kevin McCarthy. But this is where it ends up right now. With 9% in, lots more vote counting to do, a razor-thin race in Virginia 5.
And what about the races in Georgia and Oklahoma?
So take a look here. Let's go out to Georgia. The big race tonight on the Republican side here is in the 2nd congressional district. You see here Wayne Johnson. This is a runoff, I should note, right? Nobody got over 50%, and so this is a runoff to be the Republican nominee in this Democratic-leaning district. Wayne Johnson at 44.6% of the vote. He's got a bit of a healthy margin there. You see 99% of the estimated votes are in right now. 32% for Chuck Hand, who, by the way, served some time in a federal prison for his activities at the Capitol on January 6th. Right now, that doesn't look good for Chuck Hand. And to your question about Oklahoma, Anderson, I don't think we have any votes yet in the main district in Oklahoma that we are looking at here, which is the 4th Congressional District. Polls just closed in Oklahoma. You see here Tom Cole, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, longtime establishment member of the House Republican Conference, is facing this big spending outsider in Paul Bondar as a challenge here. Nothing yet. The polls just closed. We'll wait to see what happens there.
All right, David Jellian, thanks so much. The
Sure.
man at the top of the ticket, meantime, campaign today in Racine, Wisconsin.
As well.
Just in terms of the primaries tonight, Alyssa, do any of them, or any of them a Rorschach test of anything? Or
I think, Virginia 5, the Bob Good seat, is the one to watch. This is
Bob Good, who, by the way, traipsed to support the former president at his trial.
Well, and by the way, this is the chair of the Freedom Caucus. This is as right-wing as you get in the House. The most pro-Trump faction of the House Republican Conference. His only, sin was that he dared to back DeSantis in the primary. But they actually found somebody who might be to the right of him to run against him. John McGuire has admitted he was at the Ellipse on January 6th for the Stop the Steal rally. So they found somebody who may be able to outmaneuver him there. But what's fascinating is, yes, there's the Kevin McCarthy revenge tour. There's the Donald Trump revenge tour. But Donald Trump keeps saying we're remarkably united, yet you're engaging in one of the safest seats and upending an unnecessary race, spending $12 million there. It undercuts that message.
We're also now able to project another notable race. Eugene Vindman, who is a key player along with his brother Alexander in the first impeachment of the former president. We can now project he will win the Democratic nomination for the House seat representing Virginia's 7th congressional district. Karen, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to point out that Eugene Vindman, is running and looks like he's going to win. And sort of when you think about the Donald Trump revenge tour, it'll be interesting to see, sort of what, if anything, he chooses to do around this seat, because obviously Virginia is going to be a very competitive state in the presidential election in the fall.
Dave, what do you make of Trump not supporting Bob Good, who did show up, to support him at the hush money trial?
Yeah, look. So Anderson, it's bare knuckle politics, right? I mean, he's very angry that he came out and supported DeSantis, and you make two errors. You vote against Kevin McCarthy, you make a big error there, and you pick the wrong horse in the primary. I don't know what Bob Good was thinking, but it's not really smart politics on his part. I'll just say, Anderson, as a quick aside. In Georgia 3, I think it looks like our friend Brian Jack, Alyssa, everybody's friend in the White House, worked in the Trump White House, political director. There's not a human being on the Republican side of the ticket, at least, who would say a bad thing about Brian Jack. Looks like he's going to win handily there and go on. It's a safe R seat, so it looks like he'll be headed to Congress this November. And just say early congratulations to him. I think that, you won't find a Bob Good situation there. There's not a person on Capitol Hill on the Republican side that has a mean thing to say about Brian. So it's a celebratory vote there in the Republican
David,
Party.
let me ask you, Saturday at the Charlie Kirk thing, the former president was once again talking about, stop the steal, and talking about mail-in voting as being terrible and just dangerous and don't do it. You must love that. I mean, as somebody who wants to see him elected.
Listen, Anderson, we have to. Listen, again, President Trump, vote by mail is okay. We need it. Okay? I don't know what we can do, Anderson. I will, we need that early voting. We need to vote by mail. We need to bank Republican votes so that on election day,
I mean, it's
we know
incredible
whose doors to
that
knock
he is
on.
still making this argument. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Democrats who are saying, shut up, let him keep doing it.
Yes, we are, actually.
Listen, I know. The president feels very strongly about that, right? And listen, the rules are what the rules are. Where you could ballot harvest, we need to ballot harvest. We need to do everything in our power. The Democrats are very good at this.
So, David, how much money do you want the RNC to devote to people watching mail-in ballot drop boxes? Because Lara Trump seems very concerned about voter fraud as well. How much are you pushing for the RNC to devote to that? How many billions?
Yeah, look. Yeah, no, look, I'd like billions to go to early voting, right, Anderson? I'd like billions to go to banking our votes, to do the smart things so that we can win. Those are the things we need to do to win. You know, I've said this before, Anderson and Van and Karen, and everyone's heard me say this. The problem in America with voting by mail and voting, we need a winner on election night, right? Florida, you could vote by mail, you vote early, but on election night, they push a button, there's a tally, and we know who wins. And that's the problem in America. People feel that if they vote by mail or vote, not in person, that somehow that's not as effective. It creates problems. We need to remedy that. So on election night or the next morning, we know who the winner is. And I think that would do a lot to give people faith in the election system and the electoral and the way they vote to eliminate some of this concern.
And not telling them it's rigged, that helps as well.
Yeah.
David
And vote by mail does work. So, David, I do disagree with you on that point. It's okay if it takes a couple days.
No, I think it works. No, I'm saying it works. I agree it works. We need to do more of it, Republicans.
David
We
Urban.
need to catch up with you, Karen.
Karen Finney, Alyssa Farr-Griffin, thanks so much. Coming up next, we're waiting for new video of Vladimir Putin's visit with Kim Jong-un. We'll bring them to you as we get them and dig deeper into why their meeting could spell yet more misery for people in Ukraine. And later, another close associate of Donald Trump is charged with a crime, Boris Epstein, who was always with Donald Trump during his New York felony trial. He has now been arraigned today in Arizona, 9 felony counts of his own, what he's charged with and his boss's alleged role in the alleged scheme. Some more breaking election news, this time in Georgia Republican primary House race between Wayne Johnson and Chuck Hand, who was convicted for illegally demonstrating inside the Capitol on January 6. CNN can now project that the winner in that race for Georgia's 2nd District will be Wayne Johnson, who's leading now by a wide margin.
Straight from the source tonight, it is primary night in America, with results coming in right now, including a closely watched Republican race in Virginia, where former President Donald Trump is out for revenge. And a hug between two dictators that we are seeing here, new images that are coming in from President Putin in North Korea. We're also expecting to get new details from the summit of these two nuclear-armed strongmen. And a behind-the-scenes look at Donald Trump and his time on The Apprentice. The author, who sat with Donald Trump for hours after he left the White House, is here tonight. I'm Caitlin Collins, and this is The Source. As we come in the air tonight, right now, the results are still coming in from several high-stakes primary races that are playing out across America tonight. And the big test is whether revenge is resonating with Republican voters. There is one race in particular that is exposing divisions, serious ones, within the MAGA movement. That would be the race in Virginia's 5th congressional district. The Congressman, Bob Good, that you see here, he's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. He's an ultra-conservative who has supported Donald Trump's policies. And you might recall seeing him here in New York when he showed up to support Trump during his criminal trial. But unfortunately for the gentleman from Virginia, Trump is very, very angry at him, despite how he rode in his motorcade when he was here in New York. And it's all because Bob Good committed the cardinal sin of initially backing Ron DeSantis in the GOP presidential primary earlier this year.
Bob Good, who is actually bad for Virginia and who will stab you in the back like he did me.
But it's not just Trump who feels that way, as you heard him say there. He's been saying that Bob Good stabbed him in the back. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy also wants payback for Good's role in kicking him out of the Speaker's office.
We need a Speaker who will fight for something, anything, besides just staying or becoming Speaker.
Now, I should note, when I talked about those fractions in the MAGA movement, Good still has support from some big MAGA names like Matt Gaetz, Byron Donalds, Trump's own former chief White House strategist Steve Bannon. But all of that may not matter, because we are about to find out tonight just how strong Donald Trump's grip is on the Republican base, and if his opinion is the only one that matters. This race pits Good up against the Trump-backed state senator in Virginia, John McGuire. Those polls closed at 7 p.m. Eastern, and here's where the results stand right now. 66% of the vote is in, so we still have more to come. But look how close this race is. You can see John McGuire right now has 50.6% of the vote. Bob Good is at 49.4%. Look how close those margins are. It is incredibly close as we are watching all of this tonight, this test of Donald Trump, who has endorsed the name you see there to the top, John McGuire, against Bob Good, the chairman of the very influential House Freedom Caucus. My source tonight to help put these numbers into context that we are seeing here as we are watching all of this, CNN's senior data reporter, Harry Enton. And Harry, I mean, obviously, this race is so close right now at this moment.
Razor tight. My goodness gracious. You rarely, I get excited on nights like this, right? Where, I watch these old videos and I see how tight the races were in like election 2000. And then finally we get a race tonight as tight as we have it right now.
Yeah. And so obviously the question here is about Trump's endorsement and how powerful that's ultimately going to be, because really there's basically no policy differences between these two Republicans on anything substantive. But Donald Trump is backing one of them and not the other.
Correct. As you mentioned, the incumbent committed the cardinal sin of initially backing Ron DeSantis. How dare he? How dare he? And, you look at primaries so far this season, and Trump's endorsement has been as good as gold. Before tonight, only one candidate who he backed lost their primary. Look at that. 88 wins to 1. And I went back. I looked at 2022. I looked at 2020. I looked at 2018. More Trump-endorsed candidates are winning this year than in any year prior, of at least as a percentage so far. So tonight is an ultimate test of Trump's power.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because the other part is at lightning speed after Ron DeSantis got out of the race, Bob Good came out and did endorse Donald Trump. So he did try to make up for it. Clearly, it didn't mean a lot to Trump. But the other thing here that matters, if Bob Good goes down, is it's an incumbent being defeated.
It's exactly right. I feel like we have a power matchup here, right, between Trump's endorsement and the power of incumbency. And so far this year, incumbents have been winning all over the place. Look at this. Renominated, 228. Just one has lost, and that was to a fellow incumbent. So you rarely ever see incumbents lose. So this evening, we have this thing where you see incumbents rarely lose and you see Trump-backed candidates rarely lose. One of those two powers is going to go down tonight. Which one? We'll have to wait and see.
Okay, Harry, I have a question about a few other races for you, but stand by because I know you're watching all these numbers.
I am.
We have a projection. We are going to make it here, but we also have some context here of this big race in Virginia that normally we would not be talking about, but because of the dynamics here that we just laid out, it matters, and we'll see what the implications of it are, what we can read from the results. My political sources that are also here tonight, CNN senior political commentator and former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, CNN political commentator and former White House senior policy advisor under President Obama, Ashley Allison, as well as CNN's senior political commentator Scott Jennings, who is also a special assistant to President George W. Bush and a senior advisor to Mitch McConnell. Adam Kinzinger, let me start with you, though, because in this race in Virginia, Bob Good and John McGuire are both pitching themselves as the one who's in lockstep with Donald Trump. But there basically are no policy differences between the two of them. I mean, how are voters really supposed to make a decision here?
Well, in my mind, it's like, would you rather have dysentery or the flu? So, you got to pick that out. And, ultimately, at least one of them is going to lose. That's the good thing. It really, I mean, look, just from the raw politics of it, it does show the power of Donald Trump's endorsement, but it also shows that Donald Trump never forgives you, especially if somebody that is more loyal to him comes out. And this is the point. This is how you build a cult. You do this. You make everybody scared to turn against you, and that's what you're seeing right now.
I mean, Scott, he does raise a good point there that, Bob Good tried to kind of rectify his decision to back DeSantis. We talked to him about it here. He rode in the motorcade with Trump. He came out and endorsed him probably faster than we saw anyone else do it. But what does it say about, Trump's wrath if you break with him on even one thing?
Says he's a party boss. I mean, the thing about Donald Trump is that he has been the president. He's been the nominee of the party 3 times, and he is a true party boss. And you can think that's good or you can think that's bad. But at the end of the day, he's remade a political party in his image, and he likes to enforce discipline inside of that political party. And we've got an incredibly close race going on in Virginia. I don't know who's going to win. But if not but for Donald Trump's intervention there, I suspect Good would have been good. Everything would have been fine. And Trump intervenes, and all of a sudden, it's a real race. And so we'll see what happens. But I concur with what's been said. This is a test of the power of Donald Trump. But the fact that it's even a race at all shows just what influence he has with primary voters.
Well, and the money pouring into this was also really notable. I think it was about $10 million from outside groups. I mean, John McGuire was fundraising quite well. And Ashley, just from a political perspective, Bob Good, he's the first if he goes down, he's the first sitting chair in the House Freedom Caucus's, decade-long history almost to be defeated. And I wonder what this says also about the House Freedom Caucus tonight.
Yeah, for some time, the Tea Party, the Freedom Caucus were the folks that really were able to pull the party to the right. And now it seems that Donald Trump has a stronger hold on the Republican Party than that Freedom Caucus did at one point. I will just say, though, that Donald Trump has endorsed many candidates that have won in primaries. But in 2022, he endorsed many candidates that were not as successful. So he has a strong thumb on the scale in primary races, but not necessarily always evident in general elections. So not that this district is going to go Democrat, but it's something to also watch.
Well, and Congressman, what does it say if Bob Good pulls this off, if he is able? I mean, because we're looking at how closely this is right now. John McGuire has a little bit of an edge on him at this moment. We'll see how that changes throughout the hour. But what does it say if Bob Good wins?
I don't think it's going to say much because Bob Good will immediately salute Donald Trump, make up. Will do everything he can to make up with Donald Trump over the next 2 years. It's really, I mean, from an actual policy of the country, it doesn't make a difference who wins there. And the interesting thing, you mentioned $10 million spent in this race. Let's think about that. Two identical candidates, $10 million spent for one reason, Donald Trump, because Bob Good did not have sufficient loyalty to Donald Trump. That's what it comes down to. So I don't think it's going to make a difference in the politics. But obviously, if Good goes down, Donald Trump will grow quite a bit.
But Congressman, what about the Kevin McCarthy aspect of this? Because that is also a factor here, too.
Yeah, it is a factor. Kevin, it's all personal for him. He's going after, which I would do if I was Kevin as well. And so I think he hasn't had a great track record in who he's going after, but this will obviously be a win for Kevin McCarthy, who has no political future. So I'm not sure the benefit of a win here, but it'll probably feel pretty good for him to be successful if, in fact, McGuire pulls this off.
Yeah, and Scott, can I ask you about something else that happened today where Donald Trump, he's on the campaign trail, he's in Wisconsin, a critical state for him. He's still trying to clean up comments that he made behind closed doors to Republicans about Milwaukee, where the Republican convention will be held next month. Listen to what he said.
I love Milwaukee. I was the one that picked Milwaukee, I have to tell you. I was the one that picked it. These lying people that they say, oh, he doesn't like Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. I said, you got to fix the crime. We all know that. You got to make sure the election's honest. But I'm the one that picked Milwaukee.
I mean, he's really going out of the way to say that he's the one who picked Milwaukee after he was, trashing Milwaukee behind closed doors and its crime rate last week.
Yeah, good for him, because I think we're going to have a lot better time as Republicans in Milwaukee the Democrats are going to have in Chicago. When all is said and done with these conventions, I'll guarantee you we're going to come out of the Republican convention singing the praises of Milwaukee, and the Democrats are going to come out of Chicago thinking, why did we put this here? This was the worst idea we ever had. And so I'm glad he cleaned it up. It was good for him. It's a close race in Wisconsin. He needs all the good vibes he can get there.
We'll see how many good vibes there are. Scott Jennings, Ashley Allison, Congressman Adam Kinzinger, great to have you all here. Thank you.
Virginia is not for lovers, at least not tonight. That's tonight on Newsnight.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Down to the wire. Thousands of Republican voters in a district of 800,000 people in Virginia are now rendering a verdict. It is technically about two men, Bob Good and John McGuire, but it's about something else. What Donald Trump prizes most. What he's always valued above all else is loyalty. And Bob Good, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus in the House, a band of congressional hardliners that has fought hard for the MAGA agenda inside of Congress, is not good enough for Trump. Good found himself on the opposite side of the primary race with Trump. And the reason is pretty simple. Good wanted Ron DeSantis to be the Republican presidential nominee, not Donald Trump. So now enter John McGuire. He's a former Navy SEAL, a former Virginia state senator, a former attendee of the January 6th rally that preceded the insurrection. And he has Donald Trump's support now. Not necessarily because he's actually all that different from Bob Good, except in that one key metric. He didn't violate Trump's core principle. Once again, it's all about loyalty. Now, as we come on the air tonight, the race down in Virginia is an absolute nail-biter. Just 200 votes separate the two men, with 94% of the precincts reporting tonight. The lead has been going back and forth between Good and McGuire all night, and especially in the last hour. So obviously now tonight it is too close to call. So let's go live to CNN's Melanie Zanona. She's at Bob Good's headquarters in Lynchburg, Virginia. Melanie, what are you hearing from the Good campaign about how tight this race is tonight?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a very tight race, and there is a mix of excitement and anxiousness in the room behind me. Earlier in the night, I did spot Bob Good. He was sitting rather quietly with his family, eating pizza, really keeping to himself. I saw him checking his phone. It seemed as though he was anxious, like the rest of the Republican Party, to see where these results are going. But not long ago, we heard some cheering coming from inside the room when some results came in and put Bob Good ahead. Again, it's still too close to call, so we'll have to wait and see. But just the fact we're even paying attention to the race is so remarkable, because this really has become a race about Donald Trump. Bob Good has made some very powerful enemies inside the House Republican Party, inside the Republican Party as a whole, and chief among them is Donald Trump. As you mentioned, he never forgave Bob Good for endorsing Ron DeSantis, even though we should note that Bob Good did flip his support to Trump once Ron DeSantis got out of the race, but that wasn't good enough for Trump. So he did a telethon hall for John McGuire last night. He's been railing against Bob Good on social media. He even told Bob Good's campaign that he needed to stop using signs that had Trump's name on them, although we did see one of those signs in the room earlier tonight, Abby. And then, of course, there's Kevin McCarthy, the former speaker. Bob Good was one of those 8 Republicans who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy as speaker. And Kevin McCarthy and his allies have been pouring a lot of money into this race trying to oust Bob Good. Now, he does have some powerful allies in his corner as well, including people like Steve Bannon and Matt Gaetz, some people in MAGA world. But at this moment, the race is very close. And in the end, it's going to be a test of Trump's strength inside the GOP. Abby.
Yeah, very much so. It's worth noting he's not the only Republican who endorsed someone else in the primary. So it's interesting to see that it's all come down to this. Melanie, thank you very much, and keep us updated on how things are going. As we go now to our next interview, I want to note that John McGuire is still in the lead down there in that race. Joining me on all of this is Warren Davidson. He's the Republican congressman from Ohio. He is also a Freedom Caucus member. He endorsed McGuire in this race. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Abby.
So, Congressman, what does it say about former President Trump's clout among Republicans that this race is the nail-biter that it is tonight? It is so close, just a dozen votes, frankly, separating these two men.
Well, Donald Trump is the leader of our party. He's set the agenda, and that's clear. Bob Good's, very much tried to position himself to unite behind President Trump after getting crossways with him. But I think there's more to the race than that. If you look at how many colleagues got involved in this race, it's rare that colleagues get involved in primaries where you have a sitting member. I've only been involved against one other member. That was Liz Cheney. That was a lot of folks kind of worked against her. And the party ultimately officially worked against Liz Cheney. Bob Good's kind of a different case. But getting to know John McGuire, I think Donald Trump has a lot of confidence in John McGuire. So do a lot of my colleagues. And I believe he's going to be the right kind of person to work with in the 119th Congress to implement the Make America Great Again, America First, Drain the Swamp agenda.
Congressman, I hear what you're saying about how, look, a lot of your colleagues are jumping into this race. It seems largely because Donald Trump has jumped into this race. But on ideology, on the issues, there is not a whole lot of daylight between Bob Good and John McGuire, except for Donald Trump's decision to endorse against him. Are you suggesting that Bob Good is not conservative enough for you and your colleagues?
No, I think the voting record is a different issue. I mean, George Santos had a fine voting record. I don't want to draw much more of a comparison there. He was let go because he had ethics issues. Bob has got a hard time working with colleagues, and frankly, that's part of why John McGuire was asked to step in. They're both conservative. They appeal to a lot of the same people. Main difference, McGuire is a veteran Navy SEAL, but he's also got a difference in demeanor, and I think people feel like he's much more collaborative. So he's going to have similar votes, I think, in the long run. We'll see if he makes it. But, I knew this race was going to be tight, and people on both sides asked me to get involved, and whether people were supporting John McGuire or people were supporting Bob Good. And rarely do I get involved in a race, period. But this one, I really started weighing it. I go, if this is going to be as tight as we think it is, and 1,000 votes or something decides the race, will I regret whether I got involved or not? And if so, which side will I have regrets on?
Just to be
really,
clear,
when I talked to John, I felt like I should get involved and try to help him.
just to be clear, Congressman, you're talking about demeanor. I mean, are you saying that Bob Good's reputation is that he's not a very nice person? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't want to attack Bob. I will say that, anyone that attacks, Jim Jordan as a founding father of the Freedom Caucus at a Freedom Caucus meeting and relentlessly, to me, it was a bridge too far to make this guy the chairman of the Freedom Caucus. And I think the other part of it is the tactics can't just be about power and leverage because we've got a narrow majority. You actually have to build influence with colleagues, and Bob doesn't build influence with colleagues. And, you can ask other colleagues why that's the case.
What about the endorsement of Ron DeSantis? Do you think that he would have had Trump's backing if he had backed Trump in the primary from the beginning?
Well, look, one of my senators is J.D. Vance, and J.D. was very crossways with Donald Trump. And in 2022, he made peace with Donald Trump, became a strong Trump supporter, and Trump's welcomed him back, and now he's on the short list for VP. So I don't buy this narrative that Donald Trump will never forgive somebody.
All right, Congressman Warren Davidson, thanks very much for joining us as we wait for those results to come in tonight.
Thank you.
And my panel joins me now, S.E. Cupp, Jamal Simmons, and Tara Palmieri. S.E., what do you make of that? It's kind of it almost feels like making oneself into a pretzel to rationalize campaigning against the incumbent, campaigning against the chair of the Freedom Caucus, largely because of personality dispute with Donald Trump.
When you have such a slim majority, I mean, you're really gambling here. And the thing that I think seems obvious to everyone watching this is that it is not about policy. You tried to drill down on that. Congressman Davidson was saying it was more about maybe personality. But it's not about policy differences. It's not about problem solving. It's about retribution. It's about Kevin McCarthy's revenge. It's about Donald Trump's revenge. I don't know what this does to solve any constituents' problems, but this is what the Republican House has become, more like a middle school. But instead of running around giving each other atomic wedgies, they're running around trying to get them ousted from office.
I mean, also the race is, it's so close right now. I asked him this at the beginning, Congressman Davidson, if Donald Trump endorses and he has so much clout, wouldn't you expect this race to be not so close?
Except he's taking on an incumbent member of Congress in a district that he's represented. So people in this district know him, right? These congressional districts aren't that large. People, they see you at the grocery store. They see you when you walk down the street with your dog or your kids or whatever it is. So for half of the Republicans in that district to basically say no thank you to this incumbent member is a pretty big deal. It all just reminds me of, there's a great movie called American Gangster where Denzel Washington at one point, who plays the gangster, walks out in broad daylight and takes out one of his, opponents in broad daylight. Idris Elba, by the way, takes him out in the middle of the street. And it was a message to everybody sort of in town that this is what I will do to you if you cross me. And that's what this feels like to me. It's just an effort to purge by Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. He's about to step into this role. He actually met with Congress last week, which is something he's never done before he ran for re-election.
This is John McGuire?
No, I'm talking about
Donald
Trump. Yeah, he's sending a message, don't cross me. But just think of all the money that's been wasted on this race. It is a safe Republican seat.
Right.
And $5 million has been spent.
15 total for both of these candidates.
And these
Super
guys are
PACs
not
just
that
dropping
different
money.
from
Exactly.
each other.
He's the head of the House Freedom Caucus. It doesn't get more right-wing than that. And yet Donald Trump is just sending a message, and everyone is trying to prove their political mettle. The funny part about this is, though, is put Matt Gaetz on the other side of Donald Trump, because Matt Gaetz is actually supporting Bob Good because he hates Kevin McCarthy. So it's just like a circular firing squad going on within
So what
the
I said,
Republican
middle
caucus.
school. It's middle school. It's like who hates who and whose team are you on and whose lunch table are you sitting
Yeah,
at?
I mean, if you're having trouble following all of this, the bottom line is it's a Republican against Republican fight against two people who are fundamentally the same. I mean, one guy was there on January 6th. The other guy voted against certifying the election. I mean, what really are the differences here?
Trump. Trump is the difference.
Ego.
Yeah, and Trump's
And-
ego.
exactly.
This is really all about Donald Trump. Donald Trump demands total loyalty. And I think what we're doing is we're seeing if he were to actually win the White House, this is the kind of government that he would run. And if you're in his government, remember that scene of all the cabinet members going around the Trump White House and the cabinet room, all like declaring themselves, in full prostration to Donald Trump? Like, we are going to see even more of that out of Congress, out of the courts. We're already starting to see it, and then certainly out of his administration.
Just from a governing perspective, SC, I mean, I wonder what this means for the House Freedom Caucus. I actually listened to Congressman Davidson, and he's sort of arguing, okay, we got to be more pragmatic. We got to be more results driven. The messaging is all haywire among conservatives. Do they want to govern or do they want to make a point? And who is actually going to be the one to make the point? Because it seems like there are more Freedom Caucusers who actually, or who is going to be the one to govern? There are more Freedom Caucusers who want to make a point, it seems.
Yeah, and I listened to that too, and he said, he used a word, collaborative. This was a ding on Bob Good that he's not collaborative enough. That indicates to me you actually want to solve some problems.
Which would be interesting.
When they were able to, Donald Trump said, don't solve this one, immigration. We want to use it for my reelection. So, I mean, that was a good spin on it from Congressman Davidson, but I don't think this is about identifying more collaborative congressmen to solve problems. I think these guys are really just out for power, to suck up to Trump, and to become famous.
And look, Steve Bannon is on one side of this, Donald Trump is on the other.
Yeah.
It's wild out there, the Wild West, you could argue, at the Freedom Caucus. Everyone, thank you very much. Coming up next for us, Donald Trump reportedly planned to stay in Chicago during his convention in Milwaukee. That's a whole other state. But now those plans have apparently changed. We'll tell you why. Plus, Justin Timberlake refused a breathalyzer before his DWI arrest. So how did that impact the charges that he faced? And more breaking news tonight. One of baseball's all-time legends has died. We'll reflect on the life of Willie Mays.
Good evening, I'm Jim Acosta in for Laura Coates on this Tuesday night. We begin with breaking news in that so-called MAGA civil war in Virginia's 5th Congressional District. Congressman Bob Good tonight, the head of the ultra-conservative House Freedom Caucus, is fighting for his political career. Results in the primary there show him neck and neck against his Trump-backed challenger, John McGuire. The race at this point, you can see it on your screen right now, it is too close to call. Now, if Good loses, it'll be a major win for Donald Trump, no doubt. But what if Good pulls this one out? You saw those numbers a few moments ago. It is close. What then? After all, Trump did try to put his finger on the scale in this race to try to exact revenge on Good. The sin that Good committed, it was endorsing Governor Ron DeSantis in the primary against Trump. Good tried to make up for it by eventually endorsing Trump. Look at this. He showed up, even showed up at Trump's criminal trial in Manhattan. That did not work. Good was also one of the 8 Republicans who voted to remove Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. McCarthy has not gotten over that. He, too, has spent time, energy, and money to try and get revenge on Good. And joining me now, a former Republican congressman from Colorado, Ken Buck. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us. What's your impression of watching these results come in? You served alongside Bob Good in Congress and as a member of the House Freedom Caucus. This one's tight. I mean, for Trump getting involved in the race and getting behind the challenger in this race, it's pretty darn close.
Well, it's an impressive performance by Bob Good, frankly. Bob has been outspent 10-1 by McGuire's side, not necessarily the candidate himself, but Kevin McCarthy has put a lot of money in this. Other donors have put a lot of money in this. The primary endorsement that a candidate can have in this race, Donald Trump's endorsement, was against Bob. So to be as close as he is at this point is impressive. Bob came out very strongly against funding Ukraine. It's another issue that I think upset voters in his district and certainly donors in his district. So it's a close race. I don't think that Donald Trump wins this race, even if his candidate wins, because it is so close that clearly people didn't ignore all the other factors involved and just go with President Trump's advice.
Yeah, and I wonder, Congressman, does this sort of fit in with this phenomenon that we've seen in some of these Republican primary races in the presidential contest, where you see Nikki Haley, you know, even though she's been out of the race for months, getting 20% of the vote. I'm from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Trump is not that popular among Republicans in Virginia. In certain parts of the state, sure. But I kind of wonder if there's some of that going on. What do you think?
Well, I think clearly Donald Trump is taking 80% of the primary vote, but the primary vote is a very small percentage of the overall vote for a general election. And even in this race, the primary vote in Virginia was a fraction of what the vote is in this particular primary that we're looking at right now. The turnout is much better in this congressional primary. So I think that Donald Trump has some coattails. And I think especially when you get to the more rural areas like Bob Good's district, you're looking at a higher percentage of people paying attention to President Trump, but I don't think he carried the day in this particular race.
Yeah, and we saw Good supporting Trump for years. He even showed up to court for Trump's trial in Manhattan, but Trump called him a backstabber for endorsing DeSantis. I mean, what message do you take away from that? I guess you understand some of this all too well.
I think I do understand a lot of this. And I'll tell you something, Donald Trump should be focused on trying to unify the Republican base going into the general election and not picking fights like this. This is a silly fight for him to try to exact revenge and make Republicans in Bob Good's district mad. Even if Bob Good loses, there are still going to be Republicans who remember this, that are supporters of Bob Good, that will go into the general election and question whether they should vote for President Trump or not. He should be out unifying and not dividing at this point.
Right. I mean, he's out on the campaign trail saying, I am your vengeance, I am your retribution. And he's even doing it inside the Republican Party. Congressman, you said people who continue to say the 2020 election was stolen are lying to America. McGuire was at the January 6th rally and still says that Trump was robbed. What do you think about all that? And why is it that that election lie still lives on?
I have no idea why that lie lives on, other than the fact that Donald Trump continues to perpetrate that lie. I think the key is to move on and focus on the next election and get past the last election. I don't think anybody is going to vote in 2024 based on what happened in 2020. If anything, both sides should have a higher turnout and should be more diligent in terms of poll watching and making sure that everyone can agree that this election has great integrity.
All right. Republican Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado, thank you very much for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's go out to CNN's Melanie Zanona at Bob Good's primary headquarters. Melanie, I mean, we were just talking about this with the congressman a few moments ago. You know, for Donald Trump to get involved in this race and endorse the challenger to Bob Good, Bob Good is holding his own tonight, and he may squeak this out. What's going on?
Yeah, it's really neck and neck right now. And in fact, I'm standing here outside the watch party here in Lynchburg, and they are wrapping up for the night and sending people home because the race has been too close to call. And Bob Good just put out a tweet, and he said, the entire D.C. swamp was aligned against us with over $10 million in attack ads. But with your help, we were able to make this race too close to call. And I think it is worth reflecting here on just how much national attention this race has gotten. Normally, this would be a relatively sleepy race. We probably wouldn't have paid that much attention to it, but Donald Trump got involved, and that's why so many people are paying attention. As a reminder, Bob Good did endorse Ron DeSantis initially over Donald Trump. He did eventually throw his support behind Donald Trump after Ron DeSantis got out of the race, but Trump really never forgave him for that. And so he was actively campaigning for John McGuire. He was railing against Bob Bob Good on social media. He did a telethon hall last night for John McGuire. He even told the Bob Good campaign to stop using signs that had Donald Trump's name on them. Although I should point out, we saw some of those signs earlier tonight inside. And then in terms of other enemies that Bob Good has made inside the GOP, Kevin McCarthy is another one. Bob Good was one of those 8 House Republicans who voted to remove Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. So Kevin McCarthy and his allies have also been going after Bob Good. So really the odds seemingly have been stacked against Bob Good leading up to this moment. He was outspent by his opponent. This has become the most expensive House Republican primary race in the country. There's been a ton of outside spending from other groups. So we'll see in the end where this ends up. He could still hold on. Again, the race has not been called yet. It's really neck and neck here. But in the end, we're going to see this as a test of not only Trump's influence in the GOP, but also a test of the strength of Kevin McCarthy's revenge tour.
Yeah, that revenge tour has had some hiccups. There's no question about it. And Melanie, I mean, this might be within the margin where they have to have a recount in this district. So we may not know about this for some time. But Congressman Matt Gaetz, who has been involved in some of this too, he's called this the most important primary in the country. What's at stake for the Freedom Caucus if Good loses?
Yeah, this would be a huge defeat for the House Freedom Caucus. Bob Good is the chairman. They've never seen in their history as a group one of their own chairmen go down in a primary. So if he does lose, it's going to have reverberations inside the GOP. And Warren Davidson, we should point out, he is a member of the Freedom Caucus. He's actually endorsed against Bob Good. So not even the Freedom Caucus has been totally aligned when it comes to Bob Good. And it just shows how complicated and deep the divisions are inside the GOP. It's been interesting to see these sort of odd bedfellows come together, united against Bob Good. We had some members who were from the so-called Main Street Caucus. We had chairman, you had Marjorie Taylor Greene, Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy, all of these different forces combining to try to defeat him. But it's just too soon to tell whether they've actually succeeded or not. Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I love that part of Virginia. It's a great part of the state, but I mean, they're really fighting over it. It's something else. All right, Melanie Zanona. Thanks very much. We do have a live shot we want to show right now of John McGuire's headquarters. They haven't taken things down yet, and you can see there's a sign on the podium that says John McGuire, Trump endorsed. Let's discuss some of this. Joining me now, Republican strategist Shermichael Singleton and Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. Shermichael, do you like all this infighting? Is this good? Does this bode well for the upcoming November elections?
I mean, look, I think you got to figure these things out, Jim. Former president could be a little temperamental at times. I think Bob Good is finding that out the hard way.
You don't say.
You know what's interesting to me? I wonder why did he actually endorse DeSantis? I thought that was really, really odd when he did it at the time. I had always been of the mindset that Donald Trump was always likely going to be the presumptive nominee. So that was a risky take in my position. But also, I think from McCarthy's position, Good has sort of not been I guess, a good, faithful member of the Republican conference. He ousted McCarthy. In many ways, he has caused or led, some Republicans would argue, for the conference to lose some seats because of the constant and perpetual infighting when the party wants to keep those seats and potentially expand them in November. So if he were to lose tonight, I don't think it would necessarily be bad.
Yeah, I mean, but Chuck, you like this. I'm sure you also like Eugene Vindman, we should note, who's been on this program a bunch and on CNN a bunch. He's won his Democratic primary in that congressional district, hoping to replace Abigail Spanberger, who's running for governor of Virginia. A lot of interesting
There's three big races there tonight. This good race is something for Democrats. They spent $15 million fighting with each other. That's $15 million they could have used against Democrats. So as a Democratic strategist who's working on 20 congressional races, if they want to light their money on fire and fight each other all night long, that's fine with me.
All right, and to follow up on the breaking news, we've been covering this race, the 5th Congressional District race down in Virginia, that primary battle going on between Bob Good, the incumbent, and John McGuire. The challenger, the Trump-backed challenger, John McGuire, has just come out a few moments ago and declared victory, even though the results are extremely tight at this point. We don't exactly know who won that race. It's not been called just yet, but here's what McGuire had to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, the votes are in, and the people have spoken. It is an honor to be your Republican nominee for the 5th Congressional District.
Now, again, we should note the race has not been called yet. That's what John McGuire is saying, but that's the latest from that race down in Virginia. Anything breaks before the end of the hour, we'll bring it to you, but you can see the results right there coming in. Still very close to call at this point. 50.3 for John McGuire, 49.7 for Bob Good. Extremely close race right now. We'll keep you posted on all of that. Coming up next, new information coming in as two strongmen share an embrace in North Korea. And that's not all, as Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un are sharing tonight. They're also exchanging their, quote, pent-up innermost thoughts. What does that mean? We'll talk about that in a live report just next.
Tonight, too close to call, Virginia Congressman Bob Good right now trailing his challenger John McGuire by just 313 votes in the Republican primary. Votes are still coming in tonight, and that gap has been shrinking. Good is hanging on despite Donald Trump's best efforts to oust him in what's become the most expensive GOP House primary this year. Melanie Zanona is out front.
Republican Congressman Bob Good hanging by a thread.
Bob Good, who is actually bad for Virginia and who will stab you in the back like he did me.
After being targeted by Donald Trump in a bitter and expensive primary race, which remains too close to call.
Mr. Good, Trump put out a video saying you stabbed him in the back. What's your response to that?
Good is just barely trailing his opponent, John McGuire, a Navy SEAL and Virginia state senator, who declared victory hours after the polls closed on Tuesday.
Ladies and gentlemen, the votes are in, and the people have spoken. It is an honor to be your Republican nominee for the 5th Congressional District.
But Trump's endorsement of McGuire failed to deliver the decisive knockout blow he was hoping for. And even some McGuire voters wished he had stayed out of the race.
Stay away from it, and that way you won't cause problems or division. Let the people make up their minds.
The source of Trump's anger, Good initially backed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over Trump, a perceived act of disloyalty that Trump has not forgotten.
Just want to congratulate and thank Governor Ron DeSantis. America is hungry for courageous conservative leadership.
And as chairman of the ultra-conservative House Freedom Caucus, Good has made other powerful enemies in the GOP, including Kevin McCarthy, whom Good voted to remove as Speaker.
His legacy is going to be that he shrunk our party. We're down to a one-vote majority in Congress.
But Good has still hugged Trump tightly in the race, a sign that Trump's stamp of approval remains highly coveted in the GOP. Good even showed up in New York to support Trump during his hush money trial last month.
So we're here to have his back, we're here to defend him, and to tell the truth about this travesty of justice, this political persecution, this election interference, this rigging of elections.
And he made campaign signs using Trump's name, earning a sharp rebuke from Trump's team.
John McGuire has my complete and total endorsement. I want that to be understood, because Bob Good's going around saying we're friends. I mean, he was fine the last 6 months, but before that he was a basic disaster.
But Good is not throwing in the towel just yet, vowing to stay in the race until every vote is counted. And writing on social media, we believe we can still prevail.
I believe that you all will send me back to Washington.
If the margin is less than 1 percentage point, Good can ask for a recount, meaning Trump's quest for revenge remains on hold, at least for now.
And Melanie, it's amazing. I know you had a chance to speak to a lot of voters today that actually they didn't want to go on camera, which is a really fascinating thing in and of itself. I mean, so tell me about that and what they told you.
Yeah, Aaron, we've been talking to voters here in the district. Really, you can't go very far without seeing Bob Good signs and or John McGuire signs, most of which include Donald Trump's name on them. So we've been asking voters, how much did Donald Trump's endorsement impact your decision makings? And Aaron, I got to tell you, the responses were pretty mixed. I talked to one gentleman. He was wearing a Donald Trump cap. He said he's a big Trump supporter, but he said that he voted for Bob Good because he liked his policies more so than Trump's payback. So it remains to be seen whether Trump's endorsement is going to be enough to put John McGuire over the finish line and defeat Bob Good.
It's fascinating. And the fact that we still don't know, it just yet again, you realize every vote matters. And it is so good and important that in Virginia people are trusting the system as they should. Thank you so much, Melanie. And next, Larry Sabato, one of America's most trusted political experts, says he's fielding questions from Democrats asking about what if Biden's not their nominee. So why are they asking this now? Who are they proposing? Larry Sabato is our guest, and we have new reporting about Trump's ground game, taking a lot of people by surprise tonight. We'll tell you why.
Breaking news tonight, a nail-biter in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where Freedom Caucus Chairman Bob Good is hoping to fight off a challenge from Trump-backed State Senator John McGuire. Mr. Trump has portrayed Good as a backstabber after he endorsed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis when he ran for president. At this hour, the race remains, as you can see right there, much too close to call a real nail-biter down in VA. We'll keep an eye on that for you.
Primary elections happening across the country today. Quick update tonight from John Glasgow. Hey, John.
Hey, let's get you caught up. Primary elections in Oklahoma and Virginia with key House runoff races happening in Georgia. Polls are closed in all 3 states. In Virginia, Newsmax projecting Trump-backed Hung Kao will win the GOP Senate primary there, defeating Scott Parkinson, who was backed by Senator Ted Cruz. Let's go on here to Virginia House District 5. State Senator Trump-backed John McGuire with the lead currently over incumbent Congressman Bob Good. So Good, he got endorsed by lawmakers like Congressman Chip Roy and Senator Rand Paul, but he fell short of receiving the nod from Trump since Bob Good endorsed DeSantis in his run for president over Trump. So in District 7, Democrat primary, Eugene Vindman with the lead here. If you remember, Eugene, along with his brother, they played a pivotal role here in the first impeachment of Trump. And let's move on now to Georgia, House District 3, Republican primary runoff there. Newsmax projecting Trump 2024 advisor Brian Jack will defeat Mike Dugan. So stick with us here. We got the latest primary election results. More of those results will be coming in. Keep it right here on Newsmax. Send it back to you, Rob.
All right, John, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Primary elections happening across America today. Newsmax correspondent John Glasgow. How's the latest on that, John?
Hey, Rick, good evening. Polls now closed in Virginia, Georgia, and Oklahoma. Let's look here at the Sooner State. In the Congressional District 4 GOP primary, incumbent Congressman Tom Cole taking on self-funded Paul Bodner, who spent nearly $5 million attacking Cole from the right. Now, Cole has managed to unite just about every faction of the GOP, from former President Trump to Karl Rove. Now, in Virginia, though, Newsmax now projecting that Trump-backed Hung Kao will win the GOP Senate primary there, defeating Scott Parkinson, who was backed by Senator Ted Cruz. Also in Virginia, District 5, State Senator Trump-backed John McGuire with the lead over incumbent Congressman Bob Good. That was an interesting race there. Good was endorsed by lawmakers like Chip Roy and Senator Rand Paul, but fell short of receiving Trump's endorsement after endorsing DeSantis for president over him. And in Georgia, House District 3's Republican primary runoff, Newsmax projects that Trump 2024 advisor Brian Jack will defeat Mike Dugan. So stick here with Newsmax for the very latest here in the primary election results. We've got those throughout the evening. I'm John Glasgow. Back to you, Rick.
John Glasgow, thanks so much for that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Glasgow. Polls are now closed in Virginia, Georgia, and Oklahoma. In the Sooner State, in the Congressional District 4 GOP primary, Newsmax projects incumbent Congressman Tom Cole will defeat self-funded Paul Bodner. So Bodner spent nearly $5 million attacking Cole from the right. Cole has managed to unite just about every faction of the GOP, including Trump to Karl Rove. In Virginia, though, Newsmax is now projecting that Trump-backed Hung Kao will win the GOP Senate primary there. In Virginia District 5, State Senator Trump-backed John McGuire, he's got the slight lead over incumbent Congressman Bob Good. In the Democratic primary for House District 7, that is, Newsmax projects Eugene Vindman as the winner there. And in the Georgia House District 3 Republican primary runoff, Newsmax projects that Trump 2024 advisor Brian Jack will defeat Mike Dugan. So stick with us here at Newsmax for the latest primary election results. I'm John Glasgow.